Okay. So first off, welcome to WXVU podcast training. This is our first time actually doing a full training session for this, which is really cool because we were hoping to get started with it in the spring and then pandemic. So we actually had to close the production room. Obviously, you guys have seen the unused room as you walk into the studio. And our hope was that that was going to be a space where if you wanted to do a podcast separate from your show, you could just go in and use that space and like record totally separately from the live studio. Obviously, things have changed, and for the worse in that regard. But there's been a few things just in the last 2 weeks that have made it way easier to podcast. So first off, the basics of podcasting at WXVU. Every podcast that WXVU DJs produce, we encourage, and we sort of piloted it a little bit last year, and this year we really want to get going. If you make a show on WXVU, or if you make a podcast through WXVU, we want you to show us, and if I can share my screen, there we go. We have a podcast feed that's just called WXVU Podcasts, and we use this software called Anchor to distribute our podcasts, and that's what I'll be going through largely today because it's fantastic. And if you go to anchor.fm/WXVU, or you can search on any major platform, this feed, WXVU Podcasts, has an episode of every podcast we have. Currently, we have 3. One's me, and then we've got a couple others from last year. But as you make your own podcast, what we want you to do is send in an episode of your podcast. Send it to me. We'll put it up in this feed, and that way there's a central place for everyone to find everyone else's podcasts, which is super convenient, I think, and really useful. But before we get into that sort of distribution stuff a whole bunch, let's talk a little bit more about actually producing. So across the board, if you're wanting to make a podcast out of your existing show, which I'm sure most of you are wanting to do, it's really, really simple. In terms of recording, if you go into the studio, they're around the box that has the headphone jacks, which obviously now, hopefully you're bringing in your own headphones. One of those jacks should be connected to like a headphone cable that goes into a little device with a USB port. That little device, if you plug it into your computer, works like an input. So if you launch GarageBand or Audacity, or I think Audition is the Adobe one, if you launch your preferred audio recording software, you can use that USB as a source of input, and it will take in everything that's going out over the air. Your commentary, the music or whatever playing off of your own computer, anything from automation, anything from that computer, whatever you're trying to do. It's a really, really easy way to record from the station live. It sounds great. I mean, it sounds exactly like it does in your monitor. It sounds exactly like it does on stream. So that's the best way to record your show. The key is just to make sure that the little device is plugged in. The wire is plugged into it, and then the wire is plugged into the headphone splitter box, that blue box with the duct tape on it that looks kind of weird. That's how you record your show if you're doing it live. If you're doing a show at home, which if you want to do another podcast, if you want to do something that doesn't really work for on the air, but you want to turn it into a podcast at home, you can just use your phone as a mic. I use this one. I got this Yeti. It's a blue Yeti Nano over the summer. I'm not actually using it right now, but it's cheap and it works really well. It's what I use to do Think Negative, the COVID podcast. Works great. But again, you can use your phone. I mean, phone microphones are crazy good these days. So if you want to record at home, you can do something like that. If you want to record in the studio, dongle is the key. So now let's talk about, in general, well, first, any questions on that recording stuff? Great. Let's talk about how you actually produce a podcast and turn your audio into a podcast. Highly, highly, highly recommend Anchor. It's a company that got bought by Spotify last year, and basically the pitch is you can have a podcast up and running in like 10 minutes. You sign up for Anchor, you say show type, show name, you like pick a genre, a name, album art, and then you upload some audio and hit go or publish or whatever. And within 20 minutes, your show will be on Spotify because they're owned by Spotify. It makes getting stuff up to Spotify really, really easy. And obviously, Spotify would prefer that you put your podcast on their platform, right? But within a few days, it will be everywhere else. Like for WXVU, you can see podcasts, just Apple Podcasts. I don't know what this one is. This one's Google. So yeah, it's got a few options, but it's all handled completely automatically, which if you've ever done podcasting before is a huge pain if you want to do it yourself. So Anchor does it for you, and Anchor does it for free, both of which are really useful. Once you start doing Anchor, you know what? Let's demonstrate. No, this will work. You hit new episode. Oh, and the other thing I should mention, if you're recording audio on your phone or you want to do any of this from your phone, Anchor's mobile app is really, really good. It has everything that the website has and a little bit more. So if you go into Anchor, it's got record, obvious, library. This has every piece of audio you've ever uploaded on your account, which is really nice. You know, if you have something, you know, if you have an intro segment or an intro, I don't know, theme song, right, for your show, you can have that in your library and just pull it every time. You can actually get voice messages from people. People don't really use that as much, but that's okay. They've got their own transitions. So they've got some really handy features. And this sort of applies across the board, right? Record, library, transitions. The one that is brand new, like 2 weeks old, is music. Music lets you put in full songs with the caveat that whatever songs you put in, the episode that you put music in will only be on Spotify because the songs are coming from Spotify. So the WXVU account is actually connected to my Spotify account. So these are my playlists for my radio show. And you can just drag and drop songs, easy as pie. And the sort of caveat when you're sharing your show with people will then be, you know, if they have Spotify Premium, they can listen to your podcast and it will be full songs. So it will basically be your real show, just like it would be on the air. If the listener doesn't have Premium, it has like 30-second previews of each song, but it still has some music, which is kind of nice. For other types of show, you can include music if you want, but it's sort of the trade-off, right? You can put music in your show, but then it's a Spotify exclusive show. So, that's up to you. And obviously, if you're sending a music show in to go on the WXVU feed, please give us the playlist you want us to add music from, because that'd be kind of a pain if we had to track down every song. Let's see here. I'm just trying to think what else to go through in what order, Any questions about what I've got so far as I find the Zoom? Where'd the Zoom go? There we go. Any questions? No, great. So I'll just talk a little bit about what it's like to produce a music show because Chelsea, Chelsea, what kind of show do you do?
So I had the training, but I haven't gotten an opportunity to kind of think about what I want to do yet, so I'm just kind of looking around.
Oh, okay, great. Yeah. Charles, how about you?
Um, so I do a show with my roommate. We do play music, but we also we mostly do like we talk about a different movie each week and
Oh,
kind of
cool.
give our thoughts. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you wanted to have music in, right, you could do the music, but otherwise, obviously, that's looks like it lends itself pretty well to just generic podcast.
Yeah.
For shows with music in them, I'll just talk a little bit about that because it's been a learning curve. And for a sports show, right, like Jacob, or if you're just going to do the movie part of your show, Charles, um, you basically just hit record, right, and you can edit it however you like, but when you go to Anchor, all you have to do is hit upload, right? For a music show, it's a little bit trickier um, because you don't just upload your full show and then add the songs. What you actually have to do, and I'll share my screen again, is you have to chunk up your podcast by when you're talking and when the music is playing. So if I go to the episode details, this is the episode of The Come Up, which is my show um, that I put up on the WXVU feed. And if you go down to episode segments, these 10, 25 segments are me actually talking. It was all one big recording. And I basically had to go through and figure out, and it's pretty easy when you look at the waveform in your like GarageBand or whatever. It's really easy to figure out where you stop talking and where the music starts. And you just have to trim out the music parts. And so what I do and what I recommend, and it's a little labor intensive, but that's okay, is divide up every little segment that you have and then save each little segment as its own file. And that way on the Anchor side, it's really easy to assemble them. And you're basically just stacking every single thing one at a time. And it looks like a lot, but it takes 10 minutes, which is really not bad. And then you come out with, this beautiful little alternating pattern in a full show, which is great. For normal, for not normal shows, for sports or talk, way, way easier. Just hit record, edit how you like, and upload. We do ask that if you do a show, I'm glad I remembered this, please put the WXVU logo in your album art. And if you need it in a certain color, you feel free to customize it. But if you need it in a certain color, just let me know and I'll get it for you because we've got it in black and white and we could put it in whatever shade you need if it would look better with your album art. But I think that's kind of the core principles. There's nothing really other than that. You can, what was I going to say? You can schedule episodes as you create them. So if I make a new episode and I say, I'll just put this in, hit save. Episode title, description, you can put links in it. You can schedule episodes. With music shows, there's an authentication step. So because it's this new Spotify thing, they basically have a little bit of a like a verification window where I think a human looks at your show and says, are they actually making a podcast or is this just a playlist that they're trying to get, money from for some reason, right? So if you have to do a music show, there's some verification and a little bit of a delay, but otherwise super easy to schedule, date and time. Works great, is super, super consistent about actually releasing on time. Season number, episode type. These things sort of change how the show appears in different podcast apps. So like if you're looking on the like Apple Podcasts, separating, semesters by season, right, will make it really easy to tell what's 1 year and what's not. In terms of clean or explicit, if you have music that you're cleaning up for the radio, feel free to, put in explicit versions on the podcast. Like, we don't have to obey FCC guidelines here, Custom episode art, super easy. If you create a show and you want us to put up an episode on the WXVU feed, you basically need to give us title, description, episode art, and if it's a music show, songs, and also obviously the audio to put up. But another thing on Anchor that you'll see is this money tab. You can, it has the capability to add sponsorships to a podcast. I don't think we're supposed to do that. We technically could, but I'm just going to strongly recommend that you don't, because the station is a nonprofit organization, because we're a club, and I don't think we're supposed to do paid advertising. And because this is affiliated with the station, better safe than sorry, right? But otherwise, I think that's kind of it. Are there any questions on any of this stuff? I've sort of dumped a whole lot on you in a very short amount of time.
I just had one really quick question. I have a friend who's interested in co-hosting a podcast with me, but he's not currently a DJ with WXVU. Is that okay?
Yeah,
absolutely. Or would he have to Okay, great.
Yeah, if he just wants to do a podcast, he doesn't need to have station training to do a podcast, right? So if you want to do a podcast with a friend, by all means, the more the merrier. And basically, we just ask that, in return for putting your show up on the WXVU feed, you put the WXVU logo in your album art. That's it.
All right, awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I had two questions. So one, can you go over how to record the show in the studio again? Then two, how would you put I have a theme song I have for my show. How would you do that on the podcast again?
Yeah. So it is your theme song like a song, or is it like a custom little blip of something?
I just play the first minute of the song, yeah.
Okay.
But, it's still a full song. I just play the first minute of it for the show.
Okay. Is it do you have the rights to the song, or is it some artist?
Just an artist.
Okay. That's kind of tricky. I would recommend for the podcast, maybe trying to find something similar that's royalty free.
Okay.
Just because that's kind of a iffy area. But if you can find something that's thematically similar and you like how it sounds, then you can still distribute your podcast everywhere. If you really want that song, you could put it on Spotify. You can make your show Spotify exclusive, but then you're putting in the full song. You don't have customization over the songs once they're actually in your show, if that makes sense.
Okay.
And then, so back to the recording in the station. And if I'd been thinking, I would have done this from the station, but I think there might be a show going on, so that's okay. So when you go in, there's that blue box, right, with the headphone jacks. One of them should be plugged into a really thin aux cable that's plugged into a little dinky device. It's black and has a couple buttons on it and a flashing light and a USB port. You just want to plug that into your computer, open up whatever you use to record audio. And if you don't have anything, I recommend GarageBand on Mac. It's just super easy. And unless you're wanting to do, some fancier editing, it does what you need it to do. So I recommend GarageBand, but Audacity or whatever you want to use. Make sure that you're actually, set that device as your input. It's got some weird name like USB recorder or something, right? But it'll be really identifiable once you're looking at your input options. Make sure you're actually getting content from it. And I found that sometimes it'll be unplugged from the aux cable, and there's actually 2 jacks on it. So you just want to, if you're not getting content from the stream into your computer from that plugin, you just want to switch the aux from one port to the other, if that makes sense, and just fiddle with it until you get it right. You basically have 2 options, and so if it's not working, it's the other option. Hit record and then hit stop when you're done and unplug it, and obviously sanitize it, wipe it down. I think if you have wipes that aren't like gonna mess up the electronics, otherwise just use hand sanitizer. But yeah, does that make sense? That's probably clear as mud, right? That wasn't super descriptive.
Yeah.
But next time you go in, it should be just sitting on the table. A couple times I've gone in and it's like fallen between the tables, but you can just get down there and grab it. And if there's any questions, obviously I can sort of walk you through it. And when I put up this recording, and I'll put it up somewhere so that everyone else can see it, I'll also put up like a couple pictures of the recording dongle so that it's obvious what it actually looks like. So yeah. What else is there? I'm trying to think. I wrote up this whole document last year, right? Like, how do you podcast? And a bunch of it was, how do you use the recording stuff in the station that we don't use anymore because it's in the tiny room that wouldn't be good for anybody. Yeah, I think that's kind of it. If that all makes sense. If there's any other questions, obviously, please let me know. If there's any questions on like format of podcast, do not feel constrained in terms of podcast, like format or style or length. It doesn't have to be a WXVU regulation show. If you want to do a 10-minute podcast where you talk about the weather at Villanova, go for it. Put a WXVU logo on it. We're happy to have it. Whatever you want to do, if you want to make a 5-hour podcast, frankly, no one's going to listen to it, but go right ahead. But yeah, no constraints in terms of format. If you want to say from WXVU, this is the Mary Kate show, right? Throw in some WXVU stuff, put your logo on, or put our logo on there, and that's really it in terms of rules and regulations, because it's not on the airwaves, so we don't have to obey as many rules. Don't put up your own MP3s of songs you don't have the rights to, because then your podcast will get taken down. But I'm not, you guys aren't going to do that. It's easy not to do, especially now that we have an option where you can actually podcast with music. So, well, cool. Any other questions?
Yeah, some more quick questions. So with the podcast, you just go on anchor.fm.wxvu, and then you just upload it from there.
Yeah. So if you go to anchor.fm, you make your own account, you'll make your own show. And then once you have an episode that you're really proud of and you want to share, you'll send that episode file to me, the link to your show, the episode info for that episode, and we'll put that episode on the WXVU feed. But make your own account on Anchor. Like you'll be in charge of producing and releasing your own episodes. The WXVU feed just serves as like a gathering place for an episode of everybody's shows.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, I think that should do it. If there's any more questions, please let me know. If anybody watching this recording later has any questions, email me. My email's on the website, or ping me in the group me. And yeah, good luck. I'm really excited to see what you guys come up with. And thanks.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Thanks,
You
you
have
too.
a good night.
See you guys.